It's clear. I think it's clear it's coming Christmas and we're going closer to the vacation because I see a few less people today, but that's normal. We are going to close, in fact. There will be next Monday the last battle 6, which will be pretty interesting, I think. There was a nice discussion over that battle in these days, and the final lecture will be next Wednesday. So in 1 week from now we are going to close, and then there will be the exam in January. I think that the days for the appelli d'esame for the exam are already out, but I'm not sure. I know that Lorenzo arranged that. So after this December closing, we will see later on in January. Okay, today is a sort of, I would say, more technical type of lecture. We talk about financial planning, which is a few hints that we can give you on budgeting. This is, I would say, more on the economic side. Any of you who has some background on economics, or who simply had his parents or any relative who did a business, this relative of yours knows this part. And it would be useful for those of you, well, in general it's useful because also when you go into a company, it's always good as an intern or as an employee. So in the sense of the entrepreneurship, it's good sort of to know the economic value of what you're doing, especially if you're working on a project. A lot of companies work on a project-based approach. So to do what you're doing, to know what you're doing, what is the budget of that, what is the financial aspect of that project. So how much you're going to spend and how much you're going to get as a return. And even more for those people that are willing to have their own business. So those of you who maybe have in mind to do their own startup. Because this is an essential part when you do a startup, to try to plan how the cost goes. We introduced this a bit on the lecture of venture financing, and here we go a bit more into more details. So in general it's useful, it's a bit technical, so for those of you who are not doesn't have economic background, maybe it's a bit more difficult to follow. But I'm sure that you find a lot of literature on this. So it is something where there is a lot of, while on venture financing it's difficult to find literature and to find references, a lot of those references are coming from Silicon Valley papers or Silicon Valley literature. On this you find a lot, because on budgeting there is a lot of material that you could check out once you will need to do that. So for today we start with budgeting and financial statement. Here we go simply for the definition. So the financial statement, have you heard about financial statement or bilancio? Have you heard about bilancio? Bilancio di un'azienda, a financial statement of an enterprise. Okay, the financial statement or financial report is the formal record of the financial activities of those companies, of those enterprises, of those organizations. It can be a business, a person, or another entity. So this is relevant for you as physical person, because when you will start earning money, you will have to make the declaration of incomes. So your dichiarazione dei redditi. And so you know that the fiscal agency of your country would like you to pay taxes if you work. So if you are an employee, this is done automatically from the company. It's called ritenuta alla fonte, or the fact that you pay taxes is completely managed from the employer. So the company who hires you manage everything with the taxation agency, and you get only the net wage. And there is the calculation which you don't see, but takes quite a few part of your income, but it goes without you seeing. So at the end of the month, you see your busta paga, your payment check or payment record, where you get only the net amount. If there is any imbalance, so you get some more money, or there is what are called the reddito, the income or physical person the taxes over the income is based on how much you get. This is everywhere in the world, but especially here in Italy. So until a certain amount you are exempt because you don't take enough money. And then there are scaglioni. There are slots of incomes where the taxation increases. The more you get, on the last slot you pay more taxes. So everyone pays for the same slot, but when you enter a further slot, on that part of your income you pay a bit more. So this is also for the business. So a business, especially a business, is asked to take care of how much money it spends and how much money it earns. This is inserted in the financial statement. For companies, in Italy the taxation is called IRES, imposta sui redditi delle aziende, delle società, and it's fixed. It's 23 or 24%. So there is a unique taxation. Well, in the last year there have been a modification, so there is a unique taxation for all companies. So this report tells to the agency and to the public, or the audience, especially for public company. Public company it's mandatory for them to publish their checks, what they spend, the balance sheet, the financial statement. So they tell how much they spent, how much they invested, how much they earned, how much they want to keep as reserve, so they want to take part of the revenues and put them in a pot, so to save them for hard times or for next year or for other investment. And it is done in a structured manner. So there is a nomenclature to make a balance sheet, to make a financial statement. There is a part of balance sheet or statement of financial positions that tells how wealthy is a company. So it indicates assets, liabilities, owners, equity. We discussed about the equity financing. So the owners are those who bought the shares of that company. So this is how the balance sheet tells how rich the company is. I have a lot of buildings because my company is a real estate type of. So all the buildings that I bought in the past years are in the balance sheet and represent the richness, the wealthiness of the company. Then there is a second part, income statement or statement of comprehensive income, statement of revenue, which is the statement of revenues and expenses in the past year. This is traditionally done on a solar year. Okay, so 1st of January, 31st of December of the same year, and how much you earned and or how much you lost. So for the typical example, I like a lot of the wooden chair. I spent a lot to buy the wood, to buy the iron, to buy the workers that made these 10,000 chairs I did last year. And when I sell each chair in this year, so there is also a matter of seeing how much you had in your deposit. Maybe you had some chairs which were from the first year, but you didn't sell them in the past year. That makes it a bit more complicated. But let's say that you produce 10,000 chairs and you sell them this year. The selling of them goes as revenues for selling the 10,000 chairs. So the 10,000 chairs sold should cover all the cost of producing the same 10,000 chairs. Then there can be also other costs, for example, renting your office, renting your I don't know, space, production branch, the factory, whatever. And if, for example, in 1 year you invest on a new laser cutting machine, that's an investment which you will report the cost of that machine not in all the same year, but you will report it in more years, because an investment is paid back in more years. Not if you spend 1 million euro for a super advanced laser cutter, it's not that you're able to get back that 1 million euro the same year you buy the machine. The machine has an ammortamento, has a span life of 5 or 10 years, so the cost of that machine is divided into 5 or 10 years. So every year you put in your check that 100,000 euro of that machine goes into cost, and you have to cover only that cost. This is to help the company not to be overstressed from cost. Because otherwise the first year it would have a big loss. This put the company in troubles, and the next year it would have a lot of gain. But the first loss could be way too high. There is a statement of changes in equity. This usually you go to the notary and you tell them if there was an entrance of a new investor, for example, and a cash flow statement. Cash flow, today we will see, is an important aspect. We saw when we saw the chart of the life of a startup, we saw that the curve which was going down and then going up is the cash flow. Was the cash flow? Because the cash flow is very important, because if in my pocket I don't have 10 euros, which I saved myself, and so I cannot buy the 5 euro wood of this chair, I will not be able to produce this chair. So the cash flow tells you exactly how much money you have at that moment in your pocket to buy stuff and to be able to produce a certain product or service. Impossible to see, but I tell you. So, conto economico is what before we called the income statement in Italian. So this is the appearance it has. It has a series of voices in a long Excel, a sort of Excel or Word table. So all lines, well, there is a macro category. For example, the first is valore della produzione, how much products you made in your company, the 10,000 chairs. So you have the material for buying the chairs, the wood to buy the chairs, the material instead for the steel, the screws that you need to make everything, and how much you did, you did. So the valore della produzione is the selling of the 10,000. At the beginning you put the selling of the 10,000, and then the cost, which is the wood, the iron, and whatever. And what you do is that you subtract, you put at the top the income, how much you earned, at the lower part the cost, and you have a so-called gross margin of your product. So the 10,000 chairs minus the material used for those 10,000 chairs give you a gross margin. On top of that, you have to pay salaries, which are the cost for building that chairs. At the end of the day, you should be positive also by cutting the fixed cost, electricity, rentals, whatever, marketing, whatever you need to spend. These are all written here. At a certain point, you have the so-called net margin. The net margin, on that, you should also report the amortization cost that you have. At a certain point, you arrive to a margin, which is the one that you present to the agency, to the tax agency, and that margin is cut it from the tax part. So you cut it out all cost, that is the net income that you tax 25%, and so the remaining 75% is your profit. At a certain point, you arrive to the profit. And the profit is what exactly the company made in money for that year. Sounds complicated, but it's because it's also me not too good in explaining that. But if you go to a commercialista, it will be much better than me. Stato patrimoniale, on the other side, is the balance sheet. So here there are the indicators of capitale sociale. So capitale sociale is the amount that you put in the company when you incorporate it. Usually in Italy SRL, the most typical società responsabilità limitata, the most typical type of company when you start. Almost all startups are società responsabilità limitata. Most of them, so the SRL normale, the normal type of startup that you make, need a social capital of 10,000 euro, 10.000 euro. So when you have deposited those 10,000 euro, you go to the notary, you go to the Camera di Commercio, and you incorporate your company. So it tells, for example, if there is a big investor that comes to you and say, oh, I give you 1 million euro. Okay, then you increase the value of the social capital because this person is going to extend the amount of money that you have in your bank account. Okay, in simple terms, it's a bit more complicated, but let's try to make it in simple terms. Then you have the buildings, you have the assets, you have the investment you have made. Those are all important. Machineries that you have in the factory are an asset, so they have a certain value. After the amortization time, per il ammortamento, they lose their value. So if you need 10 years to discount a laser cutting machine, after 10 years the financial value of that machine is zero because you completely discharge all the cost of that machine. But if these machines are have still a value, they are placed here. Then, for example, if this company has shares of other companies, that is another asset. And if the external company today value 500,000 euro and the next year value 750,000 euro, you mark also that increase of value of the shareholded companies. So, for example, Alphabet, let's say that this is Alphabet. Alphabet inside this stato patrimoniale has also the value of the companies of Alphabet, for example, of Uber. Okay? So if you own a company, if a company owns a company, this asset, as it is wealth for the company, is placed here. Another important asset that you find here is IP, intellectual property. So if you have a patent has a certain value, it can be inserted in the stato patrimoniale as an asset of the company. Because a patent has a value, has a commercial value. It's not easy to calculate the value of a patent, but if you have a patent, you have in the stato patrimoniale. Or balance sheet. So this is the version, well, when I will give you the slides, it will be visible. Here is less visible because also it's a bit blurry, the projector. So, income statement, balance sheet. This is another simple example. So when you present the financial statement of a company, it has two parts. Okay? Cash flow. We go a bit deeper into cash flow. I already introduced it before, so I'll be quick. But in fact, I don't even repeat because I told already. Where do you think? What is this? The business model? Canvas. Oh, very good. You can read it. That's a good point on your side. Okay, so this is the business model canvas, and it was done when we were doing what? Business modeling. Our note keeper remembers well because she was not keeping, so she remembers better than the others. So this was done on business modeling, on the lecture of business modeling. So this is, we said at that time, this is the most used approach to study a business model. So where do you think in this canvas, in this chart, the cash flow reside?
On the bottom part.
On the bottom part. First answer, right answer. So the cash flow is here. And why is it there?
Because you have the cash flow is composed from one part is the input, that is the revenue. So normally products you sell, subscriptions, etc. And that on the other side you have the outputs that normally are all the costs, so renting, people's.
Okay, that's good. In fact, it's here because in the business model canvas, all the money are here, and cash flow is about money. Okay. So in the business model canvas, here you make qualitative type of reasoning. Oh, if I do the product this way, will it be nice to the customer or not? Value proposition. Yeah, the customer tells me that they like this product. Okay, so here are all qualitatives. Here you have something in between, because but these are more or less listings of things to be done or resources that you need. Here you have some values. Partners are listing of partners. So here is qualitative. Well, when we call about numbers, real numbers, money, we are talking about cost and revenues. So it's on the lower part. So if you will ever use the business model canvas, the cash flow is here. So cash flow, we said, is money in minus money out. Money in is something that you have already, or you get. You go into the bank first. You can go into a bank and ask for a loan. You can start. Most of the companies start with a loan. It's only a few percentage of companies that start with risk capital, with an investor. Okay. Usually, companies start with the own pocket of the owner, of the founder. But from the flower shop to Amazon. Amazon started with the money of Jeff Bezos. He put it 10,000 or 40,000 euro, I don't remember the slide, of his own money. I think it was 40. He put it his $40,000 US dollar on the there, and he started developing the application with those 40,000 euro plus a loan of 200,000. A loan. A bank loan. Okay? So, the money, maybe you like to work every summer in a nice camping in Garda Lake, I don't know, and then you saved a lot of money in, you should have been more or less maggiorenni, so it can be 5 years of work in a nice camping in Garda Lake, so you put aside a few money, and so you can use that money as the first pot where to take resources to start your company. Or you can ask your parents, or you can ask friends. Usually, the cash flow is depending on the business, but the time constraints are usually weekly, monthly, yearly. So you take care of your cash flow usually at week time, at month time, at yearly time. Rarely at weekly time, because then what you would do would be only doing accounting. Weekly is done, for example, in large factories, but this is more for production purposes. For example, Fiat Chrysler automobiles, they have huge factories, so they need to have weekly budgeting. So in that case, they need to know how much wheels, how much steel they will need, how much engines, how much pistons, whatever. And so in that case it's done weekly, but because they have huge numbers. Normally it can be done monthly or yearly. For sure yearly, but if you are starting, better to be aware of your cash flow from the early beginning. So the concept is the same of the water. So how much water you need, how much water you put in, from where, when. You don't need 1 million euro now to start your company. If you get a finance, an investment of 1 million euro, most of the time you won't get 1 million euro the day after the deal. You will get the first 300 or 500 or even less. And then there will be milestones in which you will get the rest. Okay? Because you don't need 1 million. If the next month I need 100,000 euro and not 1 million, then maybe I will need 100,000 the first month, 200,000 the second month, and 300,000 the third month. So there are checkpoints or milestones. How long does it take to fill the tank? So if I need to have a certain amount of money, how much time do I need to have the sufficient amount of money to start working with my company? So how much water I need to start, and then there are the expenditures. How many pieces, how many tons of wood do I need for 10,000 chairs? How much steel? How much screws? And then you start understanding how much water goes out, why and when. So the concept to take home is that the important is that some water in the tank is present. Because otherwise you're spending money that you don't have. And this is risky, because if you're spending money that you don't have, then maybe you have some debt with the bank, you have to pay creditors, those guys who provide you the wood, and if you don't have money to pay them, they can stop your business. They can ask the money, oh, tomorrow I need the money because you didn't pay me last month, and the deadline was last month. And so this is risky for the business itself. It's risky for the company, the startup, whatever. Why cash flow is important? The first part is to understand, why do you think, you all know Mel Brooks. Did you see this film? Frankenstein Jr. Who of you saw it? Raise your hands. Okay, quite a few. So, if you remember his famous sentence in the... So, those of you who raised the hands or saw the film as a competitive advantage to answer this question. To understand. So, what famous sentence does he tell along the? You can tell even in Italian. He tells in the film exactly when he has this face. Don't be shy. What's the famous sentence of the film? It can be done. In Italiano? Si può fare. You remember this in the film? Okay. And so, why cash flow is important to understand? Give me an answer. You get a super suggestion, come on. Georgiana.
Because you have to understand what can you do with that money. So, as you said, if you don't have the €5 for buying the wood, you cannot buy the wood. So.
Okay. So to understand what? To understand when you can start your company, for example. Okay? Because if you made a calculation that with the money you get from the bank and your own pocket and your parents, you are able to implement the alpha or beta version of your app or your super IoT cloud system where all Samsung washing machines are controlled all over the world, and you will start sell them to the Samsung customers and you will get a lot of money. But with the first set of money that you put aside, you understood that you can cover the expenses to go out with the release, and at that point you're sure that you can make that business. Given the fact that the hypothesis you made on how much you are going to earn are consistent. Because if you tell every Samsung payers will pay my app 1,000 euro and only with 10 customers I'm okay, then the hypothesis for the revenue part itself is not so strong, let's say. If you put your app cost to 5 euros and you get 10,000 customers that will pay 5 euro, okay, that looks more reasonable than the previous hypothesis, okay? So when you talk about cost, it's a bit more easy to make calculation, because on cost you know how much you will pay for the wood, the iron, the cutting machine, the the employee that will do everything in the factory and whatever. When it's time to calculate the income, the revenues is a bit more complicated because it's based on hypotheses, especially if you are working on a startup. Because if you are doing something innovative, typically startup does things innovative, how much the customer will pay that app, that product, that service is always a bit, there is some loop to make, there is some understanding, some intelligence to make in order to understand it correctly. Well, you can also think that, for example, there are companies, the biggest companies we have today, some of the biggest, Facebook and Google, they were not even let the people pay anything. Okay? So they didn't have revenues. They went on for a few months without getting anything. In that case, there was a strong backup made from investors. Okay? Because they were not making money. They didn't want to put advertising on their, at the first time, they didn't want to put advertising on their website, so they were not earning money. They found their business model in the medium term. So they decided to make money by selling users' data to their customers, to their real customers. So, second part. So to understand, so cash flow is important to understand if it's possible to do that idea, if it's possible to realize your product. And yes, you can do it. And the second is to explain. Why to explain? What would C stand for? Venture capitalist. Very good. You were attentive the other time. So, why is important cash flow to understand? To explain. And related to the fact that there are some potential investors involved. Prego.
People, if you want to invest on your idea, have to be really sure and to be clear what kind of process, what kind of cash flow you have. So you just need to have a really clear idea and to explain it really clear.
Okay.
If you have to invest money.
Okay. That's already a good point. Other comments, other ideas, but this is already a good answer. Other?
To explain to the venture capital what will happen to this money and basically pursue them to invest in our business.
Okay. To know how you are going to spend the money. Another one. Okay. Other ideas? Other ideas? Anything that blow in your mind? Okay. Also, well, the first two questions are all of them correct. So first, you need to have a clear idea of what you want to do, because if you don't have and you go in front of an investor, you are not able to explain your idea. And he tells, okay, you want to do this, but what is this about? And if you are not going to explain him or her in a good way, what is your idea? You say, but is this your idea or is this someone else's idea? So it's to take ownership of the idea. You are the one who is willing to implement that idea. Second, as he was saying, you need to know on what you are going to spend your money. If you're going to spend your money in a lot of stuff and a lot of material, but for 3 months of the year you're going to spend your time in Seychelles not working because there is someone else working, then the investor says, no, you have to stay in the company for, I don't want to say 12 months, but okay, take some vacation in Christmas and in summer, but you cannot spend the 3 months at Seychelles. Okay? So they want, apart from this example, but they want to understand clearly how much money they are going to put, and also the dimension of the money you need, and how you are going to spend them, and how much it will be paid back. So cash flow is important to let the people understand your idea, because if you do cash flow analysis, you are able to better understand even your own idea. When you start with your own idea, you think it's a certain way, you start adding some cash flow analysis, and you yourself will change idea on your idea. Okay? You will get more confident on your idea. Okay? Variables, very difficult to see, but I can tell you that these are the revenues or sales income. Revenues is how much chairs you sold. If this is water, you are adding water or you are taking out water? Who says is adding? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Who says is taking out? Only one. Okay, the others are sleeping. No. You said what? Taking out. Ah, two taking out. Why you think you are taking out water?
Because I'm selling it.
You are selling. And so?
And so I don't have it anymore.
Ah, okay. Here we are talking about cash flow, not product flow. If cash is water, here, cash is coming in or is going out?
Coming.
It's coming in or is going out? Cash. Coming in. Still going out. No. Here is coming.
Depends on the, maybe it is a balance.
It has a balance. You give out a chair. You give out a chair, but you paid already this chair. It was wood. It was steel. It was working hours on the employee. But you did it last year, or you did it 1 month ago. So that's are in the cost. If you take this, you bring to the second-hand market, and you sell it, you get the cash back. So it's like that you add water to your pot. Every time someone pays your service or pays your product, you are putting money inside the pot. Okay? So revenues typically are water in. The variable cost, water in or water out? What else in? No one, correct. Water out. Because variable costs are the cost that you need to pay yourself from the pot to pay the variable cost. So variable costs are wood and steel. Then you have fixed or infrastructure cost. Here there are also some suggestions. When you talk about fixed or infrastructure cost, you should identify the top cost, especially if you are working in a startup. Because if you have a startup, you haven't even seen the machines to do a wooden chair. And usually you don't do a wooden chair. But if you are in the business, you know exactly what this could cost and you have a good sensibility on that. If you are on a startup, you are going to design something where the costs that you're going to take are known but are not very precise. Only if you are in the business already, they become very precise. So you have to take, when you are in a startup, the top cost items and do a reasoning on that. So don't go too much into details because otherwise the exercise becomes very complicated. And so the fixed or infrastructure costs are water in or water out? Water out. Good. So water out. This is no water, in fact. This is EBITDA, which is the earning before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. This is in absolute the most important parameters in your financial statement to understand the profitability of your company. So if an investor comes, knock your door and want to invest in your startup, he wants to see what is this EBITDA. So how much richness, how much money, how much, let's say, wealthy is your company? Usually is related, well, always is related to the EBITDA. If you have a good EBITDA in your sector, usually the EBITDA is depending on which sector you are. Is able to understand if your company is a company where to invest or not. Usually you have multipliers of EBITDA to understand the value of a company. So this is an important parameter for you to know, because if you are going to, I don't know, create innovative solar panels for energy production, alternative energy production, or sustainable energy production, and a lot of people know how about now solar panel company are producing, which technology they use. So if you do something more innovative and more efficient, and you're able to get a good EBITDA, your investor knows that that's a good business because your technology is better, is cost cheaper, and is able to increase the amount of energy produced with solar panels. But usually the EBITDA depends on the sector. So these are the assets you need to use for the duration of the project. You want to produce these chairs for 5 years, 10 years. So the assets are water in or water out? Out. Because these are investments, these are assets. The laser cutting machine. The laser cutting machine is here. Or the vehicle, the car, or the van that you buy to one employee of yours who is the driver, that need to bring the chairs to the different shops in Trentino and in Veneto and in the whole Italy. The van itself is an investment, is an asset. Usually for vehicles is 5 years, I think, the amortization time. The debt is called amortization, in fact it's called depreciation, sorry. So the final outcome of doing cash flow is to understand, to calculate the water in the tank, how much water you have in the tank, so how much water you have in your boiler, and understand how much cash you burn, which is the arithmetic difference between cash in and cash out. There are some sectors where the cash burn is very high, usually logistics, for example, and other where you need a lot of consumables, usually you burn a lot of cash. And how much you are able to get back. This depends also on the way the people pay your product. The revolution on cash burn was, for example, introduced from, I think it was Vodafone. The prepaid, maybe you were not born, no, yes, I think you were born. But at the beginning, the typical mobile phone contract was the same as Telecom Italia. So you were using the fixed phone at home, and every 2 months they were selling you an invoice of what you spent the past 2 months. When the mobile phones started being operative, there was the same approach. It was monthly, but you were buying the contract, and after 1 month of usage, you were paying what you spent. So Telecom Italia was giving the service. It was accumulating loss because the person was using his infrastructure, telecom infrastructure, without paying yet. And after 1 month, he was receiving the payment back. So the payment was after service erogazione, after service provision. Vodafone, I think it was Vodafone, started making the prepaid cards. You pay me 100 euro now, or 50 euro, sorry. You pay me 100 or 50 euro now, and for the next 3-5 months, I don't know how much you call, you will be able to use the service. That was a genial thing for the mobile operators. Because, why? What, because? Tell me you. What happened? Georgia.
They already have the money in, so
Okay.
they are able to spend them.
Exactly. Vodafone was able to have the water before using it. So the water was there before even the company was using it. And then there was Telecom Italia who, after a few months, that's a smart idea. And they also did the prepaid card, the prepaid SIM. So that was a very smart thing to do, because you were getting a lot of people paying in advance, so you were getting a lot of water in before the customer effectively used the service. We're using the lender. There is also a matter of infrastructure. So Vodafone spent before a lot of time to put all the cells or the antennas around Trentino in Italy to be able to pay. So there was a lot of investment in infrastructure before. But the fact of prepaid made a much better business for the operator, for the mobile operators, because they were anticipating the money instead of waiting 1 or 2 more months to get the money. Calculation, I think less important. Well, usually, let's look at it. The time scale. Usually, the cash flow are done in periods, as I said. Usually, you look at 1 year, for example. Here, simply there are 4 periods. You have the possibility to calculate all the revenues and costs in terms of values, but also in terms of percentage. Usually you use a table like this to make such calculation. So it's important to consider the time scale. if you show this to an investor, you have to be prepared to justify sales volumes. The example I did you before on the app for Samsung user to control their washing machine. If you tell us that you will sell 100, 1,000, or 10,000, or 100,000, means that you know how much people you expect are going to buy your app. So you have to justify the fact that you say that not only 5 customers will use the app to control the Samsung washing machine, but that in Italy, Samsung machines, washing machines are sold, covers 15% of the market. The overall market is 1 million washing machines a year. So it means that 150,000 machines are from Samsung. And among the 150,000 machines of Samsung, I will get 10% of the customer, which is 15,000 people. Okay? So that's a rough evaluation how much customers you will have for your app. Considering that the penetration you consider is 10% of all Samsung owners of washing machine. I don't know if this is clear. So, but you have to justify. You have to make a calculation which is reasonable to the person who is investing in you or is listening to you. Fixed cost. Investors want to use how you use your money, but we said before with your 2 colleagues. Okay, EBITDA, I already told you. There is EBITDA usually depends on which sector you are. If you are in the pharma sector, if you are in the energy sector, if you are in the clean tech sector, if you are in the ICT or cloud sector, whatever. Every company usually has every domain usually have some clear, let's say, benchmark to use to calculate how valuable you are and how profitable you are. Investment, a basic rule of investment is to try to minimize investment. We already told you that you are lucky because you, as working in the ICT field, apart from telco, you don't have a lot of fixed cost in general, especially on computer science, because what you need is not a big infrastructure, most of it. Maybe you need cloud, but there is other people making the cloud if you are not putting yourself in the cloud business. I mean, if you don't want to come Amazon Web Services. But in general, ICT is a lucky domain because the infrastructural costs are not that high. To make a good app, you only need a computer and you can work even from home. You don't need to go to an office and make a lot of rentals. So in general, for all startups, the rule is to try to minimize the capital intensity, to try to minimize the cost of infrastructure and product, let's say devices that need depreciation, that you need more times to pay off, and to postpone investments if necessary. At the beginning, it's always suggested to companies not to go and buy their own office, so to go into real estate and buy their premises, but it's better at the beginning always to rent because the costs are much lower. So you should try to postpone the investment when they are necessary. And then you have to visualize the cumulative cash flow, which is this. This is more or less the same graph that we saw on venture financing. So, development cost, we already discussed on this. You always go negative when you have a new idea because you spend resources, time, your money. The product is not there when you start. When you have the idea, the product is not there. You cannot think and the product is there, and so you have no cost. You have to do that product. So it means that you need to work on it and spend time and resources to build it. So these are the development costs. Here you start selling, and so what happens is that your you are reaching the so-called point when you start having an EBITDA. So you start selling, so the first row of your financial statement start filling in with the revenues of the first 100 shares you sell, and then the other 200 shares sell, 300 shares you sell. So every month you sell a lot of shares. At the end of the year you have sold the 10,000 shares that you produced. And so these generate profit, revenues, and so profit or EBITDA. So the delta between those two, the cost and the revenues by selling them, gives you the so-called cash flow. This is also called hockey stick. Hockey stick because it has the form of an hockey stick. Okay? This is a way to call it. In fact, when you are here, it's not that the costs stop, but this you could see it as the first batch, the first 10,000 shares. My costs were like this, and those 10,000 shares made my company profitable of this EBITDA. But when you are here, it's not that you stop producing shares. You will need to buy other wood, produce other shares to keep selling. So these, imagine that will go like that, and so these can be even a bit lower. So, but the important is that say that this is the first lot you produced. At a certain point, you start selling them. Okay. So now we understand in this class if you are a patient group or an aggressive group of investors. So first, tell me what's the difference between the green and the red line. You can use even 8 words.
Green one is investing more.
One you are in one you are investing more. Okay, I talked to him because he needed. In which one you are investing more? In the green one. In the green one you are investing more. Okay, and then what happened?
And green one getting the profit more and easily.
Okay, so here you invest more and you gain more. Okay. In the red, you invest less and the revenues are less. Okay, so usually there is a proportion. The more you invest, the more you expect to. So let's say this is a less risky business. Less risky. Spend less, you are a bit more relaxed. In the longer term, you get some money. In the green, you spend more, so you need more financial resources, but then the increase is higher, and so it's like going more into bungee jumping. So, which one do you think is the best? Raise your hand who think A is better. Okay? Raise your hand if you think B is better. There is someone who didn't decide. You didn't decide. You don't have... No, lady. I don't remember your name. Blue. Yeah, you said... A, the A one. Okay, the A. And then I think there is the majority on A and the minority on B. In fact... this means that the majority of the class is patient. The minority is aggressive. Because with A, you spend less, so your exposure, your financial exposure is lower, but you are also happy to get less. If you go for B, it's like that you are exposing much more your financial incomes into a risk, but you're expecting to have higher revenues. So you're more, you like more risky business. In general, my suggestion, if you will ever become an investor, if you know that for certain this will happen, and this is the problem, because you never know, when you are here, you never know if it's going to be green or red, or even no gain at all. But if you know for sure, or your feeling says it will be for sure true that this is the correct path, then my suggestion is to go for B, because you get much higher revenues. You invest more, but if you see the difference at half of the path, you have got back. With this, you earn better. I mean, your return is your return is I would say shorter, but the delta here usually should be lower. Okay. For sure, the important is the delta. How much you invested towards the top you reach. Okay. So if you understand that this is even going down, then better to go for the red. But if you are sure that the investment is going to pay you more, better to go on the more risky investment. Okay. Okay. There are other ways, and then we stop for a few seconds. There are other ways to do things, which is this is the super risky one. What happens? What happens in general is that when you develop something, you try to diminish the initial cost and do a first release or a beta. You go out with the beta and you start getting something. Then the first beta becomes a second beta. So you invest and you start selling again. The third beta becomes the second beta becomes the release version, and you start making big money. So what you do usually that you do sequential improvements of your business or of your product or of your service. And so by investing at little at times, you're able to go up. Tell me an example. So it's called modular project or scalability. Tell me a clear example of this, of a startup, a famous startup that had this approach. It's super clear. We discussed this in venture financing.
Tesla. No.
We discussed it. Okay, we also discussed about Tesla in venture financing, but it's another. I have in mind another. Eh? Amazon, I would say nope, it's not the one I intend.
McDonald's.
Well, McDonald's, yes, this is similar, but we didn't study it.
It's Airbnb.
Airbnb, if you remember, I show you three different websites, three different platforms that they used. Airbnb went out with the first platform. It was for booking their room and the neighborhood. The second platform was when they became international. It was also with the old Airbnb logo, the one written in blue. Okay? Then the third version of the Airbnb is the one with the logo, which is an A made very strange, and is completely redone user interface. So Airbnb used exactly this approach. And if you remember, Airbnb got around A, around B, around C, around D. And every round is this. Okay? So they improved step by step. Okay, we take 5 minutes break and then we come back. Hai fatto un salto davanti. So, advices. This is a sort of small summary. The financial planning, so what we have done today, especially the cash flow, is issues that are for you. So once you decide that you want to have your company, start a new startup, start a new venture, these are essential element for you to understand the sustainability of your business. Because if you don't sell more than what you spend, then your company have issues. So this is the first. You have to make assumptions and validate them in an iterative process. For example, when you make assumptions on revenues, which means how much I will make the people pay my product, on this special side, the lean validation method that we discussed while doing business modeling, lean startup, lean validation models, validation canvas are good for you in order to understand by approaching customers how much they would pay for something. So this is good for you. In fact, it's a decision-making process. You see at the end of the year how much you think you are going to earn, but this final value let you understand if you have to fine-tune the data before. Because at the end of the day, you will see that you make some plans, but plans are bound to be maybe not followed. They are always not so exact. But still, it's good to have a plan, so to see if you're able to get close to what is your assumptions, to what is your target. When you do cash flow, if you see that there are some things that could, say, make your startup less appealing, you should not expose that part. If you know that there is some part of your cash flow analysis which is a bit, I would say, difficult or a bit unsafe. For example, at the mid of the year, you know that you have to pay the taxes, and then out of a sudden your cash pot will be not so high. There are some information that you can not hide, but you cannot underline. Okay. Cash flow at the end is visible in terms of self-confidence, because when you talk with an investor, this is also what we said before, investors will make you a lot of questions to understand how much you understand your company and how much the company is within your hands. So the self-confidence, the more you do cash flow analysis and financial analysis, the more you will become aware of what your company can do. So this is the final one. So as companies are not cash printing machines, you have to ensure that your company is able to produce money without making fake money. So now this is an example of a cash flow. So you see here all the numbers. For example, this is done for a period of 18 months, so 1 year and a half. These are the numbers. You will see it in the example, I don't say too much, and then you can graph it, and you have how much you gain when you start selling. But this is an example that is just for the sake of seeing it in an Excel file. And now we go into the business plan. The business plan is a written document describing the nature of a business, the sales and marketing strategy, the financial background, and containing a future or foreseen a projected profit and loss statement. So the definition is taken from Entrepreneur magazine. So a business plan is something that a written document usually is a Word, which at the end is also an Excel, has some tables, where you explain your business, your idea, you explain how you are going to implement your idea, implement how much sales and how you are going to market this product or service. Financial background, which means market analysis. You see who are the competitors, who is doing something similar. And then at the end you have a sort of profit and loss paragraph, where you state how much you're going to sell and how much you expect to gain. So a business plan is a roadmap for entrepreneurs. You write it because also in the case of a business plan, you become more aware on what is your idea about. So a business plan usually is done for startups. a business plan serves as a technical pitch to investors, banks, and other financial service providers. Why this? Because if you want to get a loan, they ask you a business plan. So they want to be aware of what is your project about, so that then they are able to say, okay, this venture, this finance, this startup, this project is worth being invested or is worth receiving a loan. Because the revenues are good, they are in a market that is improving, they don't have a lot of competitors, the costs they put are correct, and so they are going to give you the money because of that. If we look at the difference between business model and business plan, any of you who is able to tell me the difference, or better, definition of business model, well, what is a business model and the difference between a business plan? Any idea? What is a business model? We studied it, come on. It was few lessons, few weeks ago. I think it was, how many weeks ago? Let me check. Venture financing, no, that was on business model. It was only the 21st of October. So only 1 month and a half ago. In simple terms, please, also I didn't see you.
Business model is it's all about how a company create, keep and grow his values.
Exactly. So, how a company create, delivers, and keep gathering value to customers. Okay? Capture value from customers. So, this is modeling. So this is a conceptual approach. You use the canvas to study how you create value for a customer, how you deliver this value to the customer, and how you capture, how you keep gaining customers. You keep providing value to the customer. But you can use a sketch, you can use a canvas, you can use whatever, you can also tell. In brief, if you remember the other definition that I gave you about business model, business modeling is the way a company makes money. Rude approach, rude definition, but very essential, but very clear also. How a company makes money is not only the pricing model, how much you make the people pay your product, but it's also the way you make money. So, several aspects of the company. So, the business model is a sort of theoretical approach. It lets you understand how you could project or design your business. The business plan is after. The business plan is once you think you have a good business model that is making money, you start writing it down. And so you create the business model. The business plan, sorry. Is not going. Yes, now it's going. No, it's not going because I'm in the wrong slide. So, the business model is used for an improved early definition of the business idea. So, let's say that if you have already a business, there is no business modeling. But there can be a business plan. But if there is not a business, you start with business modeling and then you move into the business plan, if necessary. So, let's say that the business model is done at the early beginning. And is used, the business model, to prepare a good and sustainable business model. Because once you have done the business model canvas, you are able, given this concept, to write it in a very good way in the business model. The business plan is the detailed analysis of your business once the idea is validated. So never write a business model if you didn't validate your idea before. I want to make a new hanging stuff for jackets. It's not such a big idea. There is already. Or you do it super stylish, and then you sell something. You are a Alessi company, and then you make something of very high-end design, and then maybe you sell it. Otherwise, it's not so easy to sell coat hangers. Okay? So one is validated that your idea is going to sell because you're Alessi, and so people want to buy Alessi stuff. Then you can start producing it. If you didn't validate your idea, better not to start. Okay, and you have checked that the assumption you have made. You want to do a new type of trolley for kids. How do you call it? Passeggini. Well, passeggini for those who are Italian. If you are going to make a new type of passeggino, of trolley for kids, and you have investigated with all the moms of Povo, Villazzano, and Trento that your brand new innovative trolley for kids is very, very attractive for all of them because it's cheap, it's very effective, it's four-wheel drive, I don't know what it has. And so you have a lot of, your assumption that a lot of mothers is satisfied because they all say, oh, at this price I would immediately buy it. Then you have a business, you can start producing the product itself, and at that point you can also prepare this business plan. The business plan usually is done, the startup generation usually is done in steps, and the business plan comes at a certain specific point. So you have the ideation and feasibility of the idea, you do market analysis and user validation. The user validation is just what I said with mothers willing to buy the new trolley for kids. You do a strategy and the business modeling for formulation. So in fact, you start doing the business modeling already here. But here you make it more strong, more robust. You start making sales and cost production. At a certain point, you have the financial planning and the risk analysis. All this time, well, the business plan is somewhere here. Because to implement the business plan, you need to have done the market analysis and the user validation. You need to have a strategy and business model. You need to start thinking about sales, cost, and projections because you need to know how many revenues your company is going to have. So the business plan is around here. Skipping phases, there is this is one of the references that Lorenzo gave, the black swan. It's a very interesting reading, not only for the epistemology part, theory or innovation, but it's also very interesting also for real business, for making real business. Because it explains that if you, from ideation, you go directly to strategy and sales and cost, because you believe that market analysis and user validation is not worth, what happens is that you reduce the possibility for you to gather new opportunities. What I mean, I make you an example about the user validation, for example. If you skip, you are sure that your idea is fantastic, so you start making the strategy and sales and cost production, and you don't do user validation, for example. Maybe the trolley you have in mind for the kids, you try to sell it to mothers and they were not interested. The same product, by doing also this step and by going to the potential or prospective customers, you understand that by changing a bit the gear and modifying it a bit, it can become a very useful trolley for another type of customers. So for example, a trolley for elderly. So by fulfilling all the steps, you are able to open up your ideas and optimize or perfect your idea itself, because you didn't think about another potential customer. That's why it's good to go through all steps, not only to be sure that you're going to sell something, but also to collect wider ideas and be sure that you can sell even more. That's what the concept of the black swan is meant in this case. Business plan outline, executive summary. This is a summary of the whole document. Opportunity, business model, problem, target market, competition. How you are going to make your project, how you are going to make your product or service. Marketing and sales, operation, milestones and metrics. Who is the company? So who are you? And who are the owners of the company apart from you? Or who are the founders? And who is the team who is working in the group? Because maybe 3 of you are the founders, but then you have other friends of yours who are supporting the idea. And the financial plan. The financial plan is what we saw before. The financial planning or financial, not statement, because you don't need to do the financial statement. This is not a financial statement, so this is not the balance sheet of your company. The financial plan is a prospect on how much money you're going to earn, and is a simplified version of the financial statement that we saw before. Forecast and financing, and now we are going to collect money to make the things working. There is a nice version which is done from the University of Trento. So the office of technology transfer, which is at Rettorato downtown. There is an office called technology transfer, and I don't remember finance. And they use this. This is the template that is used. It was drafted from colleagues with whom we work at the University of Trento. So business plan, this is done especially for the startups who are spin-off of the university. There are some researchers or PhD students, or students, less students, but also students, that wants to make a spin-off. So with their teachers, with their professors, they open up a company where the university can or sponsor or become as a shareholder. It's very rare that they enter as shareholders. And so the students or PhD or researcher or professors have to fill in such type of model. You can find it in the university website if you are interested. In some 15-20 pages. In fact, we use also in our acceleration program Bootstrap. We use this for the teams to prepare it along the program. It can be 1, 3, 5 years. Most of the time is 3, not too long. Otherwise, it's 5. 1 is very rare. Why do you need a business plan? Document that document how your thoughts becomes an activity. It shows feasibility of your idea. It translates what you planned into something more concrete, into operations. Ensure you have considered the business from all possible point of view. This is something that we said. When you have done so much analysis on the market, on the competitors, on how you want to implement your idea, on how much cash flow you need, it means that you have a thorough knowledge of your idea. It helps you a lot to communicate your idea, and it also helps to get funding. So when you have a business plan, you get funding. So here the question comes, when to do a business plan, which is never. And it's not that this lesson is unuseful. But as the business plan is very complicated to prepare, you should focus on other aspects, especially when you are thinking about making the startup. Once you have the startup, and for example, you need funding, then you can make a business plan. Okay? Because this business plan is some 15-20 pages, which are, it's not easy to prepare them. You need to put there, sit yourself, and spend a few days in writing it. So, until it is specifically requested, you want to open a spin-off. The University of Trento requires you to draft the template that I showed you before. In that case, you have to make it. Otherwise, no spin-off from University of Trento. You don't get the timbro, the logo. You don't get the logo of University of Trento. Or if you are seek funding, or if you want to deeply understand the functioning potential of the company. This is an important part. If you really think that you have elaborated your idea for a couple of months, and you want to put all puzzle pieces into one document, that could be the business model, the business plan. So that gives you a lot of knowledge on how you worked and how you can get out from your idea. So, in the past weeks, especially when you were working with, when we were working together, you were following the let's say the more operative part or implementative part or operational part of this IBICT course. We talked about business model canvas. We talked about, well, today about cash flow, financial planning, business plan. We talked about a few other things that you could use. It's not saying that you use, but maybe you will be able to use later on. And so the conclusion of today is that these tools that we discussed, the canvas, the lean startup, the business plan, the cash flow analysis, the financial planning, are instruments that you have and that can support you in case you have the idea to become more aware inside the company on how you work and why you are working there, on which project you are working, or especially if you work in startups. So you have a set of tools that, in case you want to open your own startup, you can go back to the IBICT course lectures and check what tools you could use to think about your idea. There are many accelerators, incubators, venture incubators. There are many in Italy who are making exactly similar things. If you go to PolyHub Milano, is the incubator of Politecnico di Milano. If you go to Trentino Sviluppo, here in Rovereto, if you go to I3H, the incubator of Politecnico di Torino, in Torino, Sant'Anna di Pisa, Lewis and Labs in Rome, H-Farm, close to Venice, all these incubators and accelerators, they use these tools to let you understand how to draft, design, and then implement your startup. All of them. The instruments are those. Well, there are others, but the basics are those that we saw along the course. On top of that, there was also the part related to epistemology, ambiguity, the part of Lorenzo on understanding the environment. That is fundamental because you have both the theoretical part, which tells you how to consider hidden variables, and then tools to apply in practice what you need. In fact, this is the last lesson. This is the last lesson with content of this course. Next Monday, as I told you, there will be the Battle 6, and then the next class we will be also with innovation and entrepreneurship basics. So we will be all here in this room. That will be some sort of the closure, so a wrap up of what we have done. So today's lesson was the last with content. Let's say that well, apart from you have to study these things. It's mandatory for you, these topics, because you have an exam to do. So first of all, you need to. But this is something that maybe you will be able to call back and check it back in the future when you will be working in a corporation or other company, or you will be working with your own company. When you come tomorrow, when you come next Wednesday, we should remember that we are very squeezed when both classes are together. Maybe some of you will be already on vacation, so we will not fill in the room. But we should also try to stay all together. So we need to pack a bit, pack a bit in this class. So if you don't have questions, any question? Very good, because it's 4:30. So. Good luck.